Hi friend, I just wanted to take a minute to invite you to our Lash Biz Babes Experience 2026. This is a one-day all online event happening on May 2nd, and our theme for the year is going all in. We are shaking things up and doing it differently than anyone ever has before. This is going to be an all online event as usual, but it's going to be 100% a curated journey throughout your day as we guide you through the mindset, strategy, and passion needed to go all in on your business to make it your best year in business yet. All lash artists, estheticians, and beauty professionals are invited to join us. There will be guided sessions, interactive workshops, a panel discussion, and big giveaways happening throughout that whole day. And tickets are on sale now for only $199. Payment plans are available. Let's go all in on our businesses for 2026 together. All the details and the link for tickets are down in the show notes below. I would love to have you join us online in May. Welcome to Lash Biz Babes, the podcast for solo beauty business owners who want to build a full clientele and create a business and life that they truly love. My name is Erica. I'm your host. I'm a lash artist turned beauty business coach, lash educator, and social media manager for salons and beauty businesses. I'm so happy that you're here. Let's go ahead and jump into today's episode. Welcome to this week's episode of Lash Biz Babes. I'm Erica, your host. And this week, we are going to be talking about leaving your 9-to-5 job to go full-time in your lash or beauty business. Now, if you are full-time in your beauty business already, still stick with me because I am going to be talking about some different finance management type of things and like buying a house when you have self-employment income, and also like time management and like being a parent and full-time business owner, things like that. So I do feel like it would still be beneficial for you, but especially if you are someone who is working a 9-to-5, or maybe you have a part-time job and you're just really ready to go full-time in your beauty business, then this is going to be a good episode for you to listen to. So I want to preface this by saying that I am just going to be sharing my experiences in this episode. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on this, on what to do, what not to do. I am going to share what I did when I left my 9-to-5, or it was technically an 8-to-5, to go full-time in my lash business. And then also we are currently preparing for my husband to go full-time in his electrical business come June. So we're, for the first time in our marriage, going to both be full-time, full-fledged like business owners, self-employment income. Like we've always had his consistent paycheck too. So this is going to be the first time that we've both been self-employed. And so I'm just going to share what we're doing to prepare for that. And maybe I can do like an update episode in a few months of like how it's going, maybe some of the things we might change, because although we are really planning and prepping and like trying to be really strategic about this, I'm sure there's things that will evolve and change, and we're going to have to adjust some things as we go. I did want to share like what we're doing to prepare and just some of my experiences with leaving my 8-to-5 job to go full-time in my lash business back in, when was that? Back in 2018, actually. So it was a while ago. It was after my first son was born. So I just wanted to start with that because I think everyone's situations are going to be different. We're both in different financial spots, I'm sure. We both have different levels of support around us, different support systems, different bills to pay. Just everyone has their own individual circumstances, and that's okay. And I just want to point out that sometimes it might take some people longer, sometimes it might take some people shorter to be able to go full time. Like we're all in different spots. And I'm just going to share from my experiences, and hopefully it's something that can help like open your eyes to what that process might be like, or maybe help you think of some things to prepare for it that maybe you didn't think of before. Or if you are full-time and maybe struggling with a couple things, or you are full-time and you're just like really kind of wanting to fine tune what you're doing, I'm just sharing from my heart and hoping to help someone in the process. So with that being said, I did leave my 8-to-5 job back in 2018 to go full-time into my lash business. And I was basically a new mom. I had to go back to work for a while to make sure that the insurance paid for all of our hospital bills, and we had to go back to work, had to pay bills, had to make money, whatever, right? And so I had done that for a few months, but I was a new mom. I really wanted to be home with my baby and I really wanted to lash full time or, like lash and be with my baby and whatever else. So that was my big goal. I remember like sitting at my job and like I had some downtime sometimes and like making my website and like listening to podcasts while I was working in the print shop and like doing things to help me get ready to go full time or like, be able to quit that job to go into my lash business. One thing I will say about my experience, and I think that this doesn't really get talked about very much, is that I do feel like I had an advantage in the sense that I did have a partner, a spouse who did have a consistent paycheck coming in from his day job. That is what I feel like isn't talked about a lot because you see a lot of on social media like, "Oh, leave your 9 to 5 to go full time in your business, blah, blah, blah." There are a lot of people out there who do have that spouse or that partner who has an income, but there's also a lot of different lash artists and beauty business owners out there who are single moms or who don't have a spouse or a partner and it's just them solely relying on their own income so they don't have that extra financial support. So I will say I am speaking from the perspective of having that spousal financial support to be able to quit my other job and then go and work on my business full time and grow my business. So I think that's just something that has to be talked about. I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be an expert on it because I did have that advantage. I do feel fortunate in the fact that that kind of gave me the space and the time to work on my business and to grow my business without the really huge stress of the finances along with it. Not that it didn't make things tight, like quitting the 8 to 5 job, like until I was able to build up my lash clientele more, that still significantly cut down my income. Like I was making some from the lash business, but it wasn't like I initially replaced that full paycheck right off of the bat. And so it did make things tight and it did make our finances different. So that was something to take into consideration as well. While I did have that support, it still was stressful, but it wasn't as stressful as it would have been if it was just me. I wouldn't have been able to do it as soon if I didn't have that financial support from my husband. When I decided to go full time, we had talked about it. So initially, and I think what kind of made this really possible as soon as it did too, because I was able to, so I had my baby in March and then I quit, I think by like July ish to go work and do lashes and be with my baby at home. We had actually prepared ahead of time and like kind of going into things knowing that at some point we were going to have me quit my job to do lashes and to be home with our son. We had set up our finances in a way to where if we only had my husband's income coming in, it would be possible to do that. So we had thought about that even as soon as we got married back in 2016. The way we did things was all of our main bills were paid out of his paycheck, and then my income with, any jobs I worked or with my lashing income was more for like groceries, fun things, gas, like just kind of some of the extra things. But like my husband's paycheck paid for rent or the mortgage and the utilities and like the car payments and all of like the non negotiable bills that we had. So I think that was of benefit for us to have already set up our finances in a way to where it did give me the space to be able to quit and have a little bit of time to build up to making as much as I was when I had a desk job. And so I was able to replace that income from the desk job pretty quickly within like a few months or so with having that time and that space to be able to do that. But I think that was only really possible because of the way we had set up and managed our finances initially. So, something to think about a lot of this is going to be managing your finances well. And that's not something I'm an expert on either. I can only share from my own experiences. But, we did set it up in a way to where like all of our main bills were coming out of my husband's paycheck. So when I quit the 8 to 5 job, the main thing that was hard up front was the insurance part of things because our insurance was coming from my job. And it was like state insurance, so it was like good insurance and it was paid for, and like that wasn't something we were paying a premium on. So that has always been just like a hard thing, I guess, for us with like self-employment. And although my husband he's an electrician and he's worked for a lot of small businesses over the years and smaller companies, and they don't always offer insurance, or sometimes it's just really expensive or whatever else. So we've kind of always been, since I quit that job, in a spot where insurance was like, I feel like we're always switching insurance. But I mean, there are different options out there for that. But that is something that I wanted to point out because I feel like that is one nice benefit of having a 9 to 5 job, a desk job, like that type of employment, because they do have those types of benefits. So that is something that you have to take into account when you are looking at going full time into your business, is what is the insurance going to look like? Or, how am I going to pay out of pocket for healthcare? Or what happens if we land in the hospital, or, we get a big, huge medical bill, then what? So that's something you have to plan and prepare for. I'm not going to tell you how to plan and prepare for that because that's not my expertise, but something to think about is the insurance side of things. Because like when I found out I was pregnant with our third baby back in 2023, we didn't have insurance at the time, and I cried. I bawled my eyes out at that positive pregnancy test. I was just, for multiple reasons, and not in a bad way, but I was like nervous. And one of the big reasons that I was nervous was because we didn't have insurance. And it was like, well, shit, like what are we going to do to pay for this? And it all worked out. We were able to, get in on open enrollment with like marketplace insurance, and it all worked itself out and it was fine. But like, insurance is something that you have to think about, you have to plan for, prepare for, and pay for. So, whether you're paying for insurance or paying for medical bills out of pocket, it's something to take into consideration. So that was one thing that was like kind of a bummer with quitting the 8 to 5 job. So, there's pros and cons to both. There always has been, there always will be. I think one of the things that is most beneficial for you to think about when you are looking at leaving your 9 to 5 job, or even if you have left your 9 to 5 job and you really want to not feel so stressed every month with finances, is focusing on building consistency in your income. So this is really key with like if you're a lash artist or really any type of beauty business owner, but like with lashes, what other types of services are really consistent? Nails, like you have clients who come in consistently and frequently. So, they're coming in like every 2 to 4 weeks or so to get their fills done, and so that's what you really want to focus on when you are looking at going full time, or if you've recently gone full time or you are full time, you have to build that consistency into your income. And that's something that I didn't necessarily understand when I first went like full time into my business. Like obviously in my head, like, okay, yeah, I want to be able to build an income for my business that we can rely upon and that replaces my other income, or, doubles my other income, is more than that. But that was the thing I really should have focused on more in the beginning. It's not always just about getting new clients in the door, but it's about keeping them coming back. Okay. So that's about having that good client experience for them, doing a good job for them, using quality products, really thinking about your technique, not just getting on autopilot and in your habits, but really being intentional while you're servicing clients. There's a lot that can go into building that loyalty into your clientele and building that repeat customers, right? Because that's really what grows your lash business or your beauty business, is the repeat clients, the loyal clients. That's what's going to build the consistency into your income. So when I got to the point in my lash business where like I could rely on that income coming in, it didn't stress me out because I knew I would have at least X amount coming in every month. It was because I knew I had built that loyalty into my clientele and those repeat clients who were booking, 1, 2, 3 plus appointments out into the future already, right? So that's something to focus on and be intentional with. We've talked about this on other podcast episodes, but it is so important and it is so so key, in my opinion, to being able to go full time in your business, especially if you're looking to leave a 9 to 5. That was something I wish I would have, thought about and been a little more intentional about sooner. But like I said a little bit ago, I was able to mostly replace my 9 to 5 income within a handful of months, probably six or less months, 3. I think it honestly was probably like 3 to 4 or 5 months. I don't remember exactly. But the only thing it didn't necessarily replace was the insurance part of things. And because that costs a lot more with like my husband was working for a small business at the time, so the insurance that they offered was just a lot more expensive. So I was able to replace that income minus the insurance part of things within a handful of months. So with being able to do that, it was, getting the repeat clients in and honestly really just focusing on growing my business. And so what I mean by this is like, I don't know. I previous to that was like, "Oh yeah, I'm trying to get lash clients. Oh, there's so many other lash artists out there. Oh, clients don't want to pay for it, want to book." Like, I feel like I felt like I was doing all of the things to try and grow my business and whatever else, and sometimes it would work and sometimes it wouldn't work. But like at least for me, when I got into that situation of like, I have to make money this month. I need to get clients in the door. What am I doing to make that happen? I was freaking laser focused. I swear that's the only thing I did. I took care of my son, I hung out with my husband, and I worked on growing my business. I wasn't out there like partying or spending all the time like watching TV and doing all these things. Is I'm growing my business right now. And it's what can I do? Because I feel like I hear this a lot where people are like, well, I don't have the time to go do outbound engagement on Instagram. Like, that's so time consuming. And it's like, you don't have 15 minutes out of your day to try and grow your business today. If you truly want to go full time and you truly want to grow your business, you're going to put the time and the effort into doing that. And when you get yourself in a position where you either do that or you don't have money to pay your bills, I promise you, you're going to be willing to do a lot more than you think you are to grow your business. You are going to have to put yourself outside of your comfort zone. And I think that's just a place a lot of people aren't always willing to go. And I know I initially wasn't willing to go there. And so when I did get to the point where I was like, okay, I'm ready to go full time with this. I'm wanting to quit this. I want to be home with my baby. Having my baby really kicked my ass into gear because I wanted to be home with him. I did not want to be going into that 8 to 5 job every day. And it's not anything to do with I didn't like the job, I didn't like the people, I loved working there, but it's just that's not what I wanted to do with my life. So it's like that really kicked my butt into gear, and having that why really motivated me. So I think that's important too. You have to have that motivation because you can bring in a paycheck anywhere, right? So why are you going to put yourself outside of your comfort zone and go through these hard things and grow and like put yourself in a potential state of stress financially without a really solid reason why. So that really put a fire into my ass personally with having my baby. I want to be home with him. I want to be present with him. So that kind of gave me that external motivation that I needed personally to like really put the time and the effort into growing my business and like being willing to do things that maybe I wasn't so willing to do before and like getting scrappy with it sometimes. Like I feel like I was in that position. But really, yeah, putting that time and that effort in and like every single day, what am I doing to grow my business today? What actions am I taking to get in front of my local area? How am I reaching out to new people? What am I doing to make my experience good? How am I practicing my lashing or my services so that I can be really good at it? Because when I went full time, I wasn't super good at volume lashes at that time and back in 2018. I'm just quite frankly, I was not that great at them at that time. And so I was really working on, okay, how can I be practicing my fans every day? I remember there were nights where like the baby wouldn't sleep. My oldest is like my worst sleeper. And I would get up with him and let him go play for a little bit. He would be playing, it would be like 10 p.m. at night. He would be playing with his toys, and I would be sitting there practicing my freaking volume fans. And so that was like what are you doing today to grow your business, to get better at your business, to make this a reality for yourself? Because you have to put that time in. And I think like that really got me serious about that. And if you're in that position where you want to leave that 8 to 5, that 9 to 5, I think it can be really easy when you have that stable income coming in and to like kind of, I don't want to say, I don't know how to phrase this, maybe get complacent with it. That's what I feel like my experience was just like, oh, well, it's not really that big of a deal if I don't grow my business or like I don't get a client because I've got this other job, right? So you really have to get that fire lit and really anchor into your why. And every single day, what am I doing to grow my business today? What do I have coming up? What do I need to do next? Like, I feel like if you really want to go full time, you have to plan, you have to prepare, and you have to execute. So that brings me to where we're at now in the present with getting my husband ready to go full time in his business. And like I would be lying if I said that I wasn't a little nervous to both be full time business owners because we have always been able to rely on his paycheck. But in the same breath, I am so confident in us to be able to do this because I know we're planning and I know we're preparing. And like, obviously, we haven't gone full time with him yet. We haven't both been full time business owners yet. We're going to need to kind of switch things up, change things, and like update things and all of that. So I plan on doing an update episode of like, here's where we're at now. Here's what we changed. Here's what's working. Here's what's not working. But I am going to share just like what we're doing to prepare for this. First and foremost is the financial side of things. Obviously, that's a big deal, especially because we just bought a house like 6-ish months ago, a little over 6 months ago, back in August of 2024. And so we have a mortgage payment and the mortgage needs to get paid, right? And so, we've got 3 kids that depend on us and, for shelter and food and all of the things and to, pay for their activities and pay for their school and, do all of that. And so it's like that's an important part of things is the finances. So that's the first thing I'll touch on is, we really looked at okay, what's our debt? What do we need to pay down, whether that's credit cards. I had a student loan at one point last year that I was able to get paid off, which I'm so proud of that personally. Just a side note, I worked my ass off to pay that thing off and it took me over 10 years after aesthetic school to get it done, but I did it. I did it all by myself. I found the loan, signed for it, paid for everything on my own on it, and I'm just really proud of that. So, we were looking at where can we pay off debt? How much do we need to have in savings as well? So for me, we were looking at having at least like 3 months worth of bills saved up as like a cushion to rely on. And we were looking at, okay, how much I don't know, we've never really operated on a budget very well. So we sat down and had like a finances meeting a few weeks ago. And oh my goodness, I don't know what it is, but like, have you guys seen those things where it's like, I can't tell the difference between being chased by a bear and doing XYZ activity? Yeah, for me, my body could not tell the difference between being chased by a bear and like having a finances meeting with my husband. And it's not because he's like mean about it or anything, but it's just like the finances, like talking about finances, that was like kind of taboo in my household growing up. And it was always a point of contention and stress in my house growing up. So like that whole part was just like, oh my gosh, I just like my brain did not want to do it. I had to like re-evaluate how I felt about finances. There's the money wounds part of things, right? And you have to really, that's something to work on. That's something I'm actively working on still. Cause that like just like it makes me feel stressed when we like have an open conversation about it. And not because we're in a bad place with finances, but just because of my past experiences growing up where it was always a point of contention. It was always stressful, arguments, fighting, whatever else in my household growing up, that is how it makes me feel to talk about those things. Even when my husband and I were sitting there having a calm, productive, working together, teamwork kind of conversation about it, I was 3 hours after the meeting, I was like, "Honey, I still feel like I'm gonna throw up." And he was like, "Erica, what is wrong with you? It's fine. Like, we're gonna be fine." And it was like, "I know we're gonna be fine. Like, we have this plan. We've set out this plan. but, like, it just felt stressful to me. Having that plan in place for him to go full time is what has made me feel a lot better about that, which has included, "Okay, here's our plan to pay off the rest of these credit cards. Here's our plan to make sure we have enough in savings," and, like, so we kind of logged, like, every dollar that comes in every month, when I pay myself during the month, when he gets paid during the month, and then also, okay, how much of that are we saving? How much of that are we, groceries, mortgage, all of the like listing out all the different things. And so that I mean, we hadn't really done a lot of that previously. Like we had a good pulse on our finances, but not in the sense of like I knew where every single dollar was going. And it was really it's really eye-opening when you look at it that way. So we were able to decide, okay, here's where we need to make some cuts, maybe not spend so much like eating out. That's something that was like, okay, we're spending way too much on that every month. So let's cut on that. And I don't ever personally want to be in a mindset where it's like, oh, we need to cut, we need to save, and like really like thinking of money and finances in that way. Like, I want to think of it in a way of like abundance and like, okay, how can we make more money? Right. And like being in that type of mindset. But in the same breath, I still needed to kind of get a handle on like, okay, are going to set aside this much for food. We're going to, here's our mortgage, here's the utilities, here's the kids' activities, here's the savings. Like you still have to know your numbers. Like I just literally told my husband that last night. Like, I think we're gonna be just fine as long as we know our numbers and we're sticking to the plan. Like as simple as that. Not that knowing your numbers is always simple, but like if we know our numbers, we stick to the plan, we're going to be just fine. Having the 3-month buffer so that way, you know, unexpected expenses come up, you have a slow month, whatever else, like you have something to depend on. And I was like, okay, like we're not quitting your job until we get to that point because I feel a lot more comfortable with having that savings and buffer. So that is something we're doing to prepare. I mean, I feel like it would be I, personally feel like it would be really risky to just like completely quit your job with no savings at all. We also are putting in a place for like marketing for both of us. I obviously already have a lot of my systems and processes in place with my business, with the social media management company, with the podcast, with all the different ways that I bring in income for my business. But with his business, we didn't necessarily have like a set marketing plan in place yet. Like we have things we've been doing, but like this month, we're really going to be focusing on like visibility, getting him out to networking events, getting out and like talking to contractors and realtors and like connecting with people in the community. So we're really focusing on that and like the marketing to be able to keep the consistency of it. So we're going to swing back around to the consistency part of things because that's where I'm like, okay, it's nice in the sense that I know my income is already consistent, but we need to get his income to the point where it's also consistent, which can kind of be like hit and miss, I feel like, with the electrical business. Just because, like with beauty services or social media management services, I've got that consistency of like people coming back again and again, or they're on a monthly contract. So I'm getting paid at least X amount next month, right? It's not always the same with electrical companies. And there's a lot of things with like people stiffing their contractors or not paying them, or you're constantly having to get a flow of new clients in. Obviously, you can have instances where people hire you again to do something again, but typically most people aren't needing like a ton of electrical work done back to back all year long. So there's not that consistency. So for this business type, we're really having to focus on the marketing and the visibility because we need a constant flow of new customers coming in to create that consistency. So in my eyes, that means, okay, we really need to have his marketing plan on tapped and like actually have a strategy. We're not just like posting and praying. We're not just like waiting for people to come call us and book with us. Like that's great when that happens, but you can't rely on that to go full time in your business. And you can't rely on that to create consistent income for you. Have to take some of that power back and some of that control back. And that comes with having that marketing plan and that visibility plan in place and like executing on it and doing the things. Because it's one thing to talk about it and to talk about doing those things and to plan it, but it's a whole other ballgame to actually put it into play and execute it and do the things. And not just execute, but do it consistently. Honestly, you've gotta, like, keep up with it, and so that's where we're at with his is, like, okay, so we've kind of figured out the finances part of things. Here's we have our budget set, we know how much money we need to bring in each month, like, minimum. Here's how much money we're saving, here's how much we need to have in savings to be able to go full time. For my business finances, I was kind of looking at, okay, where can I make some cuts on expenses and, like, where's my profitability at? And it was nice because I did hire like a professional bookkeeper finally last year for the first time in my business. And that was a game changer because they send me that profit and loss sheet at the end of every month and I don't have to sit there and do it myself. So, like, again, it's about knowing your numbers. And so, making sure that my business had a certain amount of profitability to where I could pay myself a little bit more. And, like, I sat down with my accountant last year and had a meeting and said, okay, we are eventually, this is the plan, is to go full time with my husband's business as well. So I'm going to have to be shouldering more of our personal expenses. So I need to make sure that my business is in a place where I can do that. So we had a whole meeting about it and, like, okay, hiring a contractor and what's the ROI on that. And my accountant really was incredible with that and, like, just showing me things and opening my eye to things that maybe I wouldn't have thought of personally. And, like, okay, here's we want to put this percentage this place, kind of helping me manage all of that. So I feel like an accountant, if you really want to go full time, is definitely a really wonderful investment and someone that can just help you manage the financial side of things in your business. So I'm just going to share how I do things within my company. It's going to be different for everyone. You have different expenses, you have different income, all of the things, and you probably also have just different ways of doing things. But the way I do it is I will set aside like a certain percentage for savings. I set aside a certain percentage for like taxes. I set aside a certain percentage to pay my team. I don't have a huge team, but I do have a team. So, I need to make sure I'm able to pay them every month. I also set aside a percentage to pay myself. That was another thing I was actually just talking with my husband with last night is, okay, I want to get it to where, like, I'm paying myself on the same days with at least the same amount every month because I pay myself every month, but I don't necessarily always do it on the same exact days. But that's where I want to get with my business is to where I'm paying myself on a consistent schedule and like the same days. And that way it's like it feels reliable, right? It feels like, oh, it's payday that day, right? That way we know what's coming in when and paying bills and such. And where currently my business has consistent income coming in, I know I'm going to make at least X amount of gross income next month. That makes me feel a lot more comfortable. Like, I'm like, "Oh, you gotta get outside of your comfort zone," but this is what makes me feel comfortable. But still, at the same time, that makes me feel more confident because I know that we have that consistency built in already. So that's something that with working a 9 to 5 and growing your business can be kind of, I feel like it's kind of hard sometimes because you do kind of get burnt out trying to do both. I've been there before where I was working the desk job and lashing on the side and trying to grow it out, and then my husband's currently there where he's working the day job and then working his business at in the evenings and on the weekends, and there's some weeks where I swear to you he is working all day long and every night and then all weekend on jobs for his day job and his business, and it's a lot. And honestly, it's a big period of sacrifice in my experience with when you're actually kind of, you're growing it on the side and you're getting ready to go full time with it. It's a sacrifice period of, trying to get things going and get that base. But I feel like it's important to have at least some type of base for your clientele or like for your client, customer base in my husband's case. So that way you have at least something to rely on. So for us, my husband does have that foundation already built, but it's also nice because I do already have that client base already built. Like my business is already has a bit of that stability. So I would recommend that if you're looking into going full time in your business because you need to have some kind of base built that you can build on. Basically, have your foundation built. And it's going to be some sacrifice to get there because, like, my husband is gone a lot of the time during the day. Like, homeboy leaves at like 4:30 a.m. sometimes and doesn't get home till like 6 p.m. or later some nights. And it's not always that way. There's days where he's home sooner or, it's not always the same, but at the end of the day, it's a sacrifice period and it's honestly just a season. That's something I have to remind myself of constantly is that this is just a season. It's not always going to be this way. We need to make the best of it. We're just putting in the time and the work we need to right now to get this built up so we can live a little bit more sustainably, spend some more time together. So, that being said, have that base, have that foundation built before you go full time. That would be my advice. I feel like that just gives you that momentum to go off of so that you already have some type of clientele, some type of client base already built to build off of and to keep the momentum rolling. With my lash business, that meant, I had at least X amount of lash clients before I went full time, right? And I think part of that can be kind of scary because it's like, oh, well, you have those lash clients, but it's still not, replacing your full income yet or, exceeding your other income yet. But the thing about going full time is that it's going to give you that time and that space you need to build your business. That's kind of where you have the savings you've saved, you know what your budget it's like, you have that client base, and now it's giving yourself the opportunity and the space to grow. And it's risky. It absolutely is to quit your job and go full time into something that isn't as stable. It's going to be different for everybody. Some people like the stability and the benefits and, being of working in a salon or working at a desk job and having the benefits of it and, not having to manage all the business side of things. And that's amazing, honestly. Everyone's going to be different. And so if you do enjoy that, there's nothing wrong with that. You don't feel like you have to push yourself into taking risks and going full time and doing your own thing if that's not for you. Like there's no shame in working for a salon. And I feel like it's even really great because there's a lot more really good salon owners that are emerging. And like there's a lot of better places to work now than there was back when I first started as a lash artist. So don't feel shame if this isn't something that you don't want to do full time on your own. That's okay. You can stay where you're at. But figure out what's going to be the best scenario for you and your family. If you really are looking to go full time, plan things out, know your budget, know your numbers, have that savings buffer in place, give yourself that foundation already built. It's going to be that period of sacrifice, but it's going to pay off for you in the end. And, really have your marketing plan in place. Like, how am I bringing new clients in? How am I keeping them coming back? Like, what's my client experience like? Really focus on building that consistency in your income and then managing that well. However you do it. With me, where I was talking about, I, have the certain percentages that I set aside every month. I have like a buffer in savings. I save for taxes, all the things. I'm not going to pretend like I'm perfect at all of this. It's things that I work on and I get better at every month. And, sometimes I have to kind of adjust percentages or, an unexpected bill comes up or, have more expenses one month. There's different things like that, but, that is what has really worked well for me is doing it with like that percentage system. I've also seen where like Square, and I think other platforms might do this as well, but I've only ever seen it on Square because that's what I used when I was a lash artist, but where you can set it up to where it automatically takes like, I don't know, you could set it to whatever percentage you want, like say 10%, and it puts it in your savings account for you, or it sets it in a different account for you and then direct deposits the rest to your main bank account. And so it kind of like is a like your paycheck in a way where it's like, okay, you're saving for business savings, you're saving for taxes, or it's already pulling out certain percentages of money for you to set aside. And then, you pay yourself the rest of it. So you can do it in that way too. So where you're not even having to see it or look at it, it's already getting put in a separate account for you or it's getting set aside for you. And so I feel like that is a really smart way to go about it too. Then that way you're not even seeing it and tempted to like spend it on something else or not be smart with it. Really know how you're going to manage your finances well with it. I think that's a huge thing with going full time. We've got his marketing plan in place. And so with this last month of him being with the day job, we are really focusing on building out our visibility and ensuring like people know our business exists. They can find us online. We're getting out in the community. So we're going to have them at a lot of like networking events and like going into like realtors offices to meet them. Like I'm literally going to bake like a bunch of cookies and we're going to put on like make little cookie plates with business cards and send them into realtors offices and contractors offices to go meet people. So that could be like you too. You know, you could make a plate of cookies and take in business cards to like other salons or to realtors or receptionists or other photographers, other beauty business owners, other people who have like a similar target audience or who could refer you out to the people who might want to get services done by you. Like that's a great way to network and get out there. We're really focusing on that visibility piece of the marketing strategy, which if you didn't listen to those marketing strategy episodes we did earlier in the year, definitely go back and listen to them because I kind of broke down some of those different pieces. We're focused hyper focused on the visibility part so that we're getting found because we've found that when we have that really good visibility, we're getting calls for his business a lot and we're really like getting, conversions with bids and all those things. I mean, that's different than Lash businesses, right? But it's the same concept. You get that visibility, you get people looking at your booking site, you get people booking with you, see what works. And if it's working, lean into it and do more of it, right? So if you're like, oh, Instagram is really working well for me to get clients from, then lean into it more, right? Or if you're like, oh, networking events are working really well, then lean into it. Do more of that. Like go with what works and adjust what isn't working or drop what isn't working. Like don't spend your time going over and over and over on something that you're like, oh, I feel like I'm doing all the things and it's not working. So that's just my 2 cents on like the marketing side of things, but I think it is important to have a plan in place to be able to do that. Overall, I am really excited for this upcoming season. I think it's going to be a cool experience for us in the sense of like he's not going to be gone the first thing when I wake up in the morning, and we're going to be managing our time to where I have at least 2 days a week to work and then he's working the other days of the week. So we'll be able to have like time management to where we both have time to work and we're both able to get things done and then we can enjoy the weekend all together. So with the time management side of things, it's not just the finances, but the time side of things where, we're going to make sure we both have time to get our tasks done and like being able to say, okay, here's what we need to get done every week and just planning. Like I've seen people who are like, show me your calendar and I can tell you if you're going to be successful or not. And it's because the people who are more successful are the ones who have planned out their days, planned out their weeks. And like, that's what I was telling my husband recently too, is like, okay, we're talking about getting you out to networking events, but like, let's get it on the calendar. Like, we're talking about sending you out to go to realtors' offices and contractors' offices, but let's get that on the calendar and plan these things out to make sure that they're actually going to happen. So, if you really want to like plan out time, oh, I really need to get my post done for the week, plan it out in your schedule and put that on your schedule so that you have that time and that space to do it. Or like I even think about it in the sense of like dinner. I don't always have a plan for dinner. And that's why sometimes it comes around to dinner time and then we're like, what are we going to eat tonight? Because I wasn't planning and preparing ahead of time. So the better you can plan and prepare, the more successful you will be with it, in my opinion. And then I also know I did say at the beginning of the episode, I was going to talk about a bit of our house buying process with being self employed. So, with that, you have to have at least 2 years of tax returns that show a profit to be able to qualify for a house. Now, this is going to be different for everyone, but it's a minimum of 2 years of profit. And honestly, the best advice you can get for buying a house as a self employed person, no matter what business you run, is to talk to a lender and see what you would qualify for because they can actually take a look at your finances and whatnot. But what you're going to be looking at is your credit score, your profit that you're showing on your tax returns, and then also like your debt to income ratio. How much debt do you have every month versus how much income are you bringing in every month? So you're going to need those, tax returns, and that comes with like actually paying your taxes. Obviously, write offs are great, but like you still have to show a profit if you want to buy a house. So that's one of the reasons why we also bought our house when we did and didn't let him go full time in his business until we had already had our house bought so that we could buy it while he had that stable paycheck. We didn't buy our house fully on my self-employed income, no, because he had his income from his electrician job as well. We purposely bought a house first before we planned to let him go full time with his business. So that is something to take into account if you do have any large purchases you want to make. Consider the timing of that before going full time. But if you are already full time, you've got to have the at least 2 years of tax returns showing a profit, paying off your debt to income ratio. So that was something to take into account is just, being able to like count with my income and such is, what amount did you actually show as a profit? And is that going to be enough for like your ratio and like your credit score and different things like that? So talk to a lender. I think they're going to be able to give you the best advice with buying a house as a self-employed person. But for us, we did purposely do it to where we bought it before he quit so that, we wouldn't have to wait a few more years or more to be able to show the profit we needed to buy a house as self-employed couple. The finances side of things isn't really talked about that much, and it can be kind of like a taboo topic, but it's just part of being able to go full time. You've got to have a good pulse on your finances. You got to be able to manage that well. I hope this was helpful for you, maybe helps you think about some things you didn't think about before. I think an accountant is a very critical part of the process as well, or like a bookkeeper at least, to be able to help you know like where your money is going and manage that well for you. And that way you know your numbers, you know your profit and loss and all of that. So yeah, if you guys have questions, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at XOEricaShram or at LashBizBabes on Instagram. I'm excited for this, and I'm definitely going to keep you guys updated on like how this process goes and what we might change about how we're approaching things in the future, or what we're doing in addition to this, right? So wish us luck. If you're in this spot where you're in that planning and prep mode or you're looking at going full time, I wish you luck. I'm cheering you on. I'm excited for you. It's a lot of work. In my experience, it was so worth it. I was so happy to be able to leave my 8 to 5 job to Lash and be home with my babies. I did have that buffer of having spousal support on that, and not everyone has that. So if you aren't in that situation, sometimes it might take longer, and that's okay. Like, don't beat yourself up about that or feel bad about it. But I think what really helped the most, because still quitting that job still made finances tight for us and changed things for us, especially as far as like insurance and such went. Focus on that consistency in your income and manage your finances well. And everyone's journey is going to be different. It's hard to not let yourself play that comparison game, but try to really stay in your lane, put your little blinders on, and just focus. What can I do to grow my business today? I'm cheering on. I know that you'll get there. I'm excited for you. But thank you so much for listening today. I feel like I don't normally talk about this side of things very often. So, all the transparency, all the, this is where we're at right now. And so it's exciting. It's fun. And like, I honestly am just thrilled to get to spend more time as a family and to have like the income potential and the opportunity potential. And I was just telling my husband that last night too. It was just like, I'm so excited for this because, we do have so many opportunities ahead for us. And like, it is stressful. It is a risk. There's worries and nerves that go into it too, but like, it's also exciting. And so try and keep your mindset on the positives and like the potential that can come with it. Keep an open mind to the opportunities that you have around you. So thank you so much for listening today. I hope this was helpful for you. And if you did enjoy the episode, go over and leave us a review so we can help reach more beauty business owners out there. I hope you guys have a good week, and I will talk to you again next week.